Welcome to the Rebel Love Show, where we are pro-pot, pro-gun, and pro-coffee. This is a once-a-week broadcast from Manchester, New Hampshire. We are all here for the Free States Project. You can find all of our content at rebelloveshow.com, facebook.com/rebelloveshow, or you can watch our beautiful faces on youtube.com/rebelloveshow. I am Rob Mathias.
And I am Joel Valenzuela.
And
today, we have a very, very special guest. Just look at that special guest face there. Yeah. And we have Joe Liberty Carrots, the famous activist, the famous troublemaker.
Rising star.
And we'll call him Joe, but he's the carrot extraordinaire. So, good having you here, man. Come on.
Thanks. It's awesome to be here. I think you're giving me a little bit too much credit, but I appreciate it.
Too much credit. You are the rising star of Manchester
hey, you know what?
activism.
It's just credit's like money. You take it. You get it? You fucking take it, okay?
All right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's great. No, it's really good to be here. I've been looking forward to doing this show for quite a long time.
Well, hey, I have too, like about a week. I look forward to it every week. And it's like Sunday, I'm like, start counting down the days. And then it's like, this is the highlight of my week. And hopefully it's the highlight of yours too, or we'll kick you the fuck off the show.
Well, I don't know. If it's anything like hanging out with you guys outside of this, I won't get my hopes up too high. But
Oh, gosh.
No, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be in Manchester. I'm glad to be part of the Free State Project. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on.
How long you been in Manchester?
I moved here in January of 2003. Yep, right around
wow.
right early 2013.
I was gonna
So-
say
Like a little under a
There's
year.
a big difference there.
Hardcore.
Yeah, just about a year and a half, maybe. A little shy of that.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what I always want to know
Yep.
and stuff is where these people come from, right? People like us, where do we grow? What kind of fertile soil do we spring from? So where did you grow up? What state? I've heard conflicting reports.
Well, I was born in Illinois. I moved around. I've moved around my entire life. I think I counted one time, and I think it was like the 27th or 28th time that I moved when I moved to Manchester here. So I've moved around my whole life. I've spent most of my time in California, but I've been to most of the United States and lived in a lot of different regions.
Now, whereabouts in California?
The Bay Area, all over the Bay Area. I
Oh.
lived in San Francisco for a little bit. That was definitely my favorite.
Well, I was born in Menlo Park, a suburb of San Francisco.
Sure.
My parents were big into they lived in San Francisco for a while, so that's where I'm from.
I thought you were born in Mexico.
Depends on who you ask. I'm not even kidding there.
I know you aren't.
All right, so moving on. Illinois stuff. How far back? If someone had to ask me where I'm from, one place, I'd be Arizona. I just say that because I spent a lot of time on the border just south of Arizona, moving up. I spent a lot of time living, yada yada yada. It's always been a launch pad for me. That's kind of the biggest identity I have is Arizona. Where are you from like that?
I usually say California. That's where I spent most of my time. That's where I definitely spent my formative years, and that's where a lot of cultural influence I have comes from. So I definitely spent a lot of time there. But
So, high school, college, graduate school, doctorate, law school. What's up?
Well, I went to all my high school in California, and I went to college 4 different times, and I just can't sit still in a classroom.
Dude, you were
Couldn't get
the
enough?
fucking man. That was me too.
I just couldn't.
I transferred back and forth between a few colleges myself, so I know what that's like.
It's, going and sitting in class, especially, trying to go through something that I'm interested in, start doing political science courses. I can learn more on the internet in an hour than I can sitting in a whole week's worth of poli-sci, most
I
poli-sci
agree.
courses. And I'm not saying I know everything, but it's just complete indoctrination. And
Well, yeah, I mean, because for the most part, it's the government telling you what they want you to kind of learn, even in a political science class.
Exactly.
Where, like, the internet, you're unschooling yourself, as an adult, because you get to choose what you want to learn, and you can learn at the rate that you want to learn at.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's nothing I haven't been through, and I'm not aware of many formal structures of schooling that will even think it's a legitimate position to question the legitimacy of the state in itself in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I went to one of those. I went to Georgia With University in Utah, and
Really?
Ludwig von Mises was on the curriculum.
Oh, okay.
And so I was, I read the Declaration of Independence before it was like not the final edition, the first draft, Jefferson's original draft, where he had this huge long anti-slavery rant in there that the rest of the founders was like, oh, we got to get rid of this shit, and then just like cut in the final version of the Declaration and stuff. So like I went back to a lot of those kinds of things. It was kind of cool.
Did you just happen upon that, or were you liberty-minded before?
I sort of grew up semi-liberty-minded. My mother used to be a raging liberal feminist, and then she turned into like a gun-toting Ted Nugent-style conservative, and so which is a trip in and of itself. And so I was always, from as long as I can remember, I was always pro-gold standard, and it was sort of like a Ron Paul conservative. You know what I mean? Like conservative, still in wanting its, still defending the semi-legitimacy of a small state, but wanting sound money, no foreign intervention, and an extreme liberty kind of thing.
See, he kind of started out kind of in the libertarian realm, so to speak, even as a young age. Like for me, I had to unjack myself from the Matrix type of thing.
Sure.
I was like deeply programmed from, TV, like America and all that jazz. But where did you come from? How did you have a journey of getting to, obviously you're here, so I mean, most people here they have some sort of philosophical journey that it took them to get to this point.
Well, yeah, it was. I was heavily, I don't know if it's if indoctrinate's the right word, but American values from where I was originally born in Southern Illinois was definitely instilled in me at a young age from influences in my life. So my ideas on what freedom actually was different, but I've always felt a sense that people should be free, and that definitely has been my strongest values. I wanted to go in the military from as long as I can remember. I sent the Marines recruiting letters off when I was like 10 or 11, and they were sending me posters and T-shirts every year, and I knew I was going to join the military because I thought that was the proper way to serve your country, and I thought that was honorable. And there are a lot of patriots in the military. A lot of people are there just for the benefits, but even by military standards, I would say I was a pretty hardcore.
What was your? Let me jump in. What was your red pill in regards to being anti-military?
I don't know if it actually was one red pill. I don't know. There were certain things that at the time I was in the military, the glitches in the matrix, if you will, that I said, wait a minute, from what I understand coming in here, and we're supposed to have faith in our leaders, and this is a way, you come in and sacrifice this for the greater good because you're doing a good cause. And if that is true, then I know this doesn't make sense. But at the time, you don't really have time to think about it. So it was really a long process when I got out of the military, when I had time to digest what actually happened. And I can attribute that to several things, friends, family, me just wanting to do my own research. I definitely credit psychedelic drugs with that. That helped really break down the barrier. If there was one red pill, it was probably came in the form of mushroom and acid and MDMA.
Yeah, so for all the kids listening at home,
do drugs
in a responsible manner.
Dare to do drugs to resist the state. Well, I think that's it. I sort of got the same natural inclinations because there's everything about the concept of the military is still something I'm very pro, as in very pro serving your fellow man, very pro being ready to give your life if necessary in the defense of the almighty ideal of liberty, being willing to die for the freedom of others, and just so everyone can have a better life and way of living. And that's still something I'm very much for. And back in the day, like 3-4 years ago, I was still in talks with the recruiters to go into the Marine Corps as an intelligence officer, but I was too far along the road and my conscience just wouldn't let me, so I stopped.
Sure.
But I mean, I understand exactly the same drives that got you there to begin with.
Well, I think a lot of people have those in the military. Some stuff they really mess up, but some stuff they really know what they're doing. And what they really know what they're doing is how to manipulate people on small levels, and that's what they play into. That's why, they say it over and over again: honor, integrity, servant, and sacrifice, and service before self, and things like that. But, and that's true. That is honorable. But what they're doing it's a big sales pitch, and it's a lie. And, in my honest opinion with it.
So, how long did you, as they call it, serve? And how did that end? Was it just like a contract up, or was it something else?
Oh, it was my contract that was up, and there was always jokes. excuse me, from even when I got in, that like, oh, this guy's going to be a lifer, because I was all about it. I was really motivated while I was in, but just seeing the inefficiency and knowing, and when you see, you're like, well, we're not in this war to win it. Well, why aren't we doing this? And some of the mistakes going down the road, I thought that it maybe just be like misguided leaders within the military, or I knew something was wrong along the way, and I was so frustrated that by the time it came up for me to get out, I thought that I could do the same type of service in the civilian world, like as far as being a police officer or something like that. But, like I said, once I started asking myself those questions and going down a different path, that didn't really become a plausible way of life for me at all.
With being at this this philosophical rabbit hole of liberty, as we all are here, and being former military, what's your opinion on oath keepers?
I've looked into them a little bit. I think it's like a lot of political stuff. It starts out with a good, well-intentioned, and then people start jockeying for political power. You have different things that can come in and interfere with it. I mean, obviously, like anything, there could be better stuff done. There could be worse, but I love the principle behind it. I think they show up and do a lot of great things. Some of the some of the bad press they get is probably a little bit undeserved, but I'm willing to give people a lot of breaks on stuff as long as their heart's in the right place, And they say the road's paved to hell with good intentions, but I still give people a lot of credit because I like what they stand for in principle, or what the message is supposed to be.
Now, what do you think of the Constitution?
The Constitution. Well, I talk a lot about the Constitution still. It was hard to read, but Lysander Spooner, I believe it was, who said, it either allowed this to happen or it wasn't strong enough to stop it.
Pesky Spooner.
Yeah.
He changes the hearts and minds of every constitutionalist out there.
And
I used to be the same way. I used to look at the Constitution as if it was the holy.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Now it's like, no, this is just pretty much a blueprint for our enslavement. If you look at Article 1, Section 8, the whole powers of Congress, and listening to Spooner talk about how there was literally a contract for 39 people, over almost 200 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. Now, the way I view it is half and half. I view it half the same way. One thing, the kind of government that the Constitution authorizes is not one that I'm down with. I'm not cool with that at all. On the other hand, I'm totally super pro-Constitution in that so much that's going on today is so far and beyond that. And if that can be used as a tool, but this is the law, and just bring it back down there, that's the first step to where we need to go.
Exactly.
In that way, I'm pro-Constitution.
Absolutely.
But then at some point, I'm not going to be ranting now to the general public about just a piece of paper that authorizes our enslavement. I'm not going to be doing that right now.
It's the only thing I agree with George Bush. It's just a goddamn piece of paper. That's my only thing I agree with him on.
Trash my homeboy here.
Yeah. Oh, God. Mr. Minarchist over here.
No, I'm just kidding.
It is true, but I think, when military people or other people, they take oaths to the Constitution, I believe in the rule of law, but I also believe in the spirit of those laws. So, when I took an oath to the Constitution, I took that seriously, and I still plan on honoring that. And it's not maybe necessarily the Constitution itself, but the ideas that it's supposed to stand for, which is liberty and freedom.
Well, that's not really. I mean, that's in the Bill of Rights, but that's not really in the Constitution.
Well, maybe the idea behind it, but you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
I mean, the Bill of Rights is great, but even the Bill of Rights don't protect the American people from the powers of Congress.
Exactly.
And even then, in the Bill of Rights, you have eminent domain where the government can come in and steal your property.
Right.
But no, I agree. There are the idea is supposed to protect freedom and liberty. It's just that so many people, via the indoctrination of the school system, you're taught to believe that this is some sort of magical document and it's protecting us and giving us our freedom, when in all honesty it set up the government that we have. Either, like Spooner said, it set up the tyranny we have or was powerless to prevent it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, so you got out, your contract was up.
Mm-hmm.
Just throwing a little side note there, I think that because you had the lifer, you were so much of a lifer that you weren't a lifer. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You were so serious about it that you couldn't last.
Right.
And I've been that way before in organizations too, where I'm like, let's win this thing, and even the president of the organization isn't as gung-ho, and so I just burn out. I'm like, I'm done.
Right.
And anyway, so I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Talking about myself here too much.
No. You expressed my ideas a lot clearer than I could on that.
So, well, that's good, eh? Well, that's what whiskey's for, but we don't have any. Anyway, so you finished your contract, and then how many years ago was that?
I got out in August 2005, and then I got back to the States in about it was right before Christmas of that year. I had about 30 days of leave before that, so I was technically out a month before. And then I took all my money from Middle East deployments and went and partied like I was in a boy band around Europe, and came back with about $400.
Well,
I made
was
it
it
back
worth
to the
it?
States. Absolutely, I'd do it all over again. Absolutely, it was a blast.
So in my mind, there's like a 5 to 7 year gap, or no, there's almost a decade long. What happens from then to now?
Honestly, when you start and see it's like a floodgate opening. You know, as soon as Congress can start manipulating the words of the Bill of Rights, people are like, well, all right, Congress shall make no. But then they're like, well, we can kind of do this. It's that first barrier that's hardest to get past. And those were extremely painful for me. You know, I was taught, and it was heavily drilled into my head and my belief structure and how I viewed the world, that certain people had an interest in things that they didn't. And I felt really used. You know, I felt like a lot of my time and my sacrifice was counterproductive to what I was trying to do. And, you know, so I just kind of traveled around the country, and I wasn't very productive in those times. But, you know, it was a little bit of a dark period. It was rough.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. And like I was in the political scene in D.C. up until 2008, and I sort of had this like keep my head low kind of period until just when I moved out here.
Well, I certainly can't speak for all veterans, but I have noticed, and sometimes when I hear other people's stories, it seems like it's a common problem with a lot of this, like, you know, PTSD or, oh, what do we do coming back? It is. You don't have time to do anything when you're over there. There's no time to think. It's just time to react. And when you get back, you're losing, you know, your life is these different emotions, and how you view the world is a little bit different. And you try to morally justify what happened, and there's no way that you can reason to that. You cannot reason. I don't think it's possible you can lie to yourself. There can be cognitive dissonance, but that's going to make you even crazier as well. Going
through what you've gone through, would you, anyone thinking about joining the military, would you tell them not to?
I wouldn't tell them not to. I would really, what I would really tell them to do is to try to make a really well-informed decision, because, you know, most people think you sign up for 4 years, but the minimum enlistment in your commitment to the military is 8 years. So I don't want to tell people what to do. They have different values. You know, maybe they do want to go do this. Maybe, you know, a lot of people join the military because they just want to go kill people. And I wouldn't tell them not to do it. I would strongly advise them.
You wouldn't tell them not to kill people.
Because they're going to do it anyway. You
right,
know
exactly.
what I'm saying? Better.
Exactly.
I'm going to shut up now.
No, go ahead. But it's true, because they're going to do it. And I could say, hey, you know, you might want to consider this first. You might want to do that. But at the end of the day, you know, it's going to happen, and it's going to keep happening. And don't get me wrong, sometimes I do go out there and just freak out and tell everybody to fuck off. But
we all do that.
That's part of it too. So I don't know what I would do. It depends on the circumstance. But, you know, I've talked to people that I know that were going to join. And a lot of it at that point, especially when they're so in there with the recruiter, you know, you're that age, you're not really thinking, you know, with reason. It seems like an adventure. There's certainly, you know, it's appealing because of the benefits and the certain not instant, I guess it could be earned in certain ways, but respect that you get from just putting on the uniform. And you're so blind into that mindset. You know, it's like trying to stop a fighting dog by waving a flower or treat in front of its face. It's pretty tough to do.
Yeah, there's a few, I know plenty of people who are saying, oh, my brother is going into the military.
Right.
And I try to tell him not to, and he just won't listen to reason. And I have to admit, although I never felt the lure that they do it to that degree, the propaganda machine is intense, and it really hits you. I mean, for lack of a better term, right in the nuts. It really goes for, this is how you're a man. This is how you protect your family. This is how you protect the ladies. The ladies are all going to love you for this. It gets you in every little bit of your manliness. I mean, I'm sure that women fall prey to this too, but it's mostly, it tries to tie your entire male self-identity around going into the military, and there's no way you can. I don't get how people don't do that. You know what I'm saying? Like I definitely understand why people join the military. Of course, I don't get how anyone doesn't join the military. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, for me, the pride and the stuff that came with it, that was another reason why it was so hard to admit, and it was kind of hard to see what was happening. Is because you put on that U.S. Air Force or this or that, and you're going, and you really are proud because you think that you're doing something right, but it's easy to get suckered in.
Do you know what? Have you heard of Terminal Lance?
Yes, I have.
Wait,
I've read it a couple
What
times.
is Terminal Lance?
It's a satirical. The comic strip, right? Yeah, it's a comic strip about military life.
Yeah, it's this guy who's a lance corporal in the Marine Corps who just does comics about the life and stuff. And the term Terminal Lance means he's just never quite into the bullshit enough to get past a lance corporal. He's a terminal. That's where he's stopping right there. And that's one of the few Reb comics I've read like almost entirely through, and I think it's really, really fascinating because he's obviously, since he's in the military, he's pro-military to a certain degree, but he's also not sugarcoating anything. Like, he's done things about recruitment ads and how they're completely full of shit in terms of what they advertise life's going to be like. It's like, honor and then the bayonets and all that kind of stuff, and then it's like, there he is with a mop bucket right there. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. It's certainly shocking, especially somebody that's really wanting to, all G.I. Joe and has this misconception about what the military is. And nobody could ever really know until you join. But it is nothing like what you think you're getting yourself into. And it's the same reason that government and systems get messed up is because politics come into play. Most of the, even when I come around police officers around here, the lower guys, the guys that are actually doing the work as opposed to making the decisions, which is top heavy, is all backwards because you have people only interested in their own gain themselves at the cost of everyone else that's below them instead of the true dedicated ones that actually want to do the job. If you're a real soldier, you don't want to be sitting behind a desk. You don't want to be sitting in some office all the time. You want to be out in the field. But unfortunately, that doesn't come with political power in most cases. That's very generally speaking. So you get the guys that, aren't really soldiers. They're just politicians, and they're the ones making the decisions. And if you look at a lot of armies, the German army they had very well-trained NCOs, and it allowed them to react and do things a little bit faster. I mean, there's better examples probably than the German army, but their NCOs and their lower level officers that were in the field that were empowered to make decisions, and that's where they put the training and the focus on. They're much better off. And our military now is just completely top-heavy with politics and bean counters and people that have no skin in the game, really.
It's not my military. FYI.
No.
Not our.
Oh, yeah, our military, yes. The military of the United States. And that's generally speaking. I mean,
I know.
Well, you could say sort of it's our military whether or not we like it. But
That's true.
Yeah,
that
we
is
paid
really
for it.
true. That is very true.
Now,
you paid for
you
it.
have the dual dubious association of being both former military and former police, both in the same nice little tight little package. So you want to talk about the police aspect of your work?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I wanted to do. It was different where I was, but I definitely, where I was stationed at, we had a heavy law enforcement mission. And that gave me a unique insight. Right now I'm pretty anti-police because, they're the enforcers for the mafia is how I see them, So it certainly gave me a unique insight, I think, because, I know what it's like to pull somebody over when your backup's far away and you don't know who it is walking up on them. So I understand, some stuff I give a little more leeway. But also I was trained in the exact use of force that they were. And I'm not shy about when I see it and when I see something on video or how stuff works or how easy it is to articulate a report, little tricks and stuff that are played. But if you're so self-righteous, which is fed you, and even in the military, police are always divided. A lot of people don't like cops, and that includes a lot of people in the military. And so you isolate a group of people, and then you start having this group think. And you have this outside pressure going on, so everybody from the inside say, really self-righteous. And sometimes it can lead to people thinking that small misdeeds can justify the ends.
Yeah, how does this, does your background allow you to relate very easily to law enforcement, like on a personal one-on-one level. Like when you're coming down real, like, hey, I know what it's like, and then you just talk to them. Does it make your mission of spreading the ideas of liberty any easier, or does it make it more difficult, or what do you say? What do you say?
I think it makes me easier to talk to them. I don't think it necessarily makes them understand me any better because, I'll just be dismissed. Oh, you weren't a real cop, or oh, you didn't do this, or there's always going to be some way where they're not going to find something to do that, So it does. I think I understand the cop mentality a little bit more. It certainly didn't help me when I was around some questionable characters because I've been told I still look like a cop sometimes. But
Have you ever thought about joining the Manchester Police Department, work from the inside, be like an informant for the Liberty community?
There's absolutely no way in hell they would hire me, man. I might be able to get onto some podunk department somewhere, but I still doubt that.
You should run for sheriff.
I've thought about it.
You should.
Yeah, I might. I don't know. We'll see what happens down the road. I'm pretty busy right now and got a lot on my plate, but it's something that certainly piques my interest.
Well, there's not a lot of people in the, you have a military background, police background, whatnot. There's not a lot of porcupines that have that kind of. Maybe there are, but not enough that really would can relate to the natives that would vote for it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah. So you would have an opportunity to run for sheriff.
It's kind of a weird dynamic though, because part of my background's really shady, and then part of the other background is cop. So it's like hard for me. Like if I'm trying to
I don't see how those two things are different.
If I go somewhere in the shady world, yeah, exactly. Well, different sides of the shady world, I guess you could say. But it's hard to do things when you look like a cop, and sometimes that didn't work out too well for me.
Now, I don't think you look like a cop. Who says you look like a cop, and why?
I don't know. Sometimes when I get my hair's a little long. It's been a couple weeks since I do. Well, especially around people that are using really hard drugs and stuff. I guess compared to them, I do certain ways I talk and things like that. It's definitely came up in some awkward situations where, I was pretty nervous about being around some people doing some things.
What makes you nervous?
People with guns that are twacked out on drugs.
Well, yeah, I mean that's kind of sanity.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I'm very
not just like smoking some weed. I'm talking about guys that have probably been up on meth and pill and coke for 3 or 4 days. They're like, "Oh, are you a cop?" Yeah, that scares me, man.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm super pro gun. I'm pro drug rights.
Right.
And the two at the same time, I'm not entirely comfortable with that.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, if you're gonna do hardcore drugs, don't be carrying.
Well, I mean that's the whole thing back to the drug wars because it becomes necessary. I mean once you reach a certain level in the black market gang, it's unquestionable that you're just gonna have to use violence and be prepared to use it, or you're just gonna get eaten alive.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that I was ever there.
Well, no, if you're operating within the black market, you can't go to the official protection service because they will arrest you. So you have to take protection into your own hands, literally.
Exactly.
In fact, a couple weeks ago when we had Rich Paul on the show, he was talking about when he was in that business, he always used to open carry all the time, partially for activism reasons, but partially because he was in a dangerous business and you just kind of needed to take protection into your own hands.
Absolutely. And that's, there's no legitimate third party to settle disputes, and therefore you get violence. I mean, that's pretty obvious how that goes. But it was definitely weird in some situations, especially when I first got out, and I was still, I was used to having backup, and you're out there and you're like, oh, I'm 21 years old, I got a badge, I got a gun, and oh, if somebody messes with me, who's gonna come here? The fucking U.S. military, man. In some places where you're at, within a few hours, you're gonna have planes and tanks rolling in to fuck people up. Well, that gives you a little bit of extra confidence.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a posse around you, when someone wants to kick your ass, you do tend to get a lot more confidence.
That's true. Yes, that's very, very true.
Timmy Tough Nuts real quick.
I love that.
Numbers help.
Anyway, I like ideas, right? I'm always thinking because for a lot of people of the anarchist persuasion, it's so easy to just say, government sucks, let's get rid of government, and then without thinking the next step. It'll sort itself out. I like to be a step ahead and think about what comes next.
So you're trying to be the next Stefan Molyneux?
No comment. So, what I'm thinking, we don't. If we're trying to get rid of police, what takes their place? And I have some ideas, but as someone who has been involved with that, like, what would you think?
What do you want to see?
Like, you're the one who's trained in law enforcement kind of activity. If tomorrow all government collapsed, you'd probably be the first one to go to, or around here, for insight on how to deal with a community that's safe and protected. So what do you think about that?
I think it would honestly be the same people that are doing it now.
But
so
how?
the same people that build the roads will be the same people that build the roads.
Sure.
Yeah.
And to say there's never going to be obviously a utopia or perfect solution, depending on how the government collapses, a bunch of different variables. I think the Threat Management Center in Detroit is an excellent show. And even right now there's a lot of private security out there. Private security officers outnumber law enforcement officers now. But what you have now is that security officers, people are like, oh, you're not nothing, you're just a security guard. Well, yeah, they don't have immunity. They don't have prosecutors on their side, so they're not going to use force as much. And people take that as a weakness, and it is in certain ways when you look at it, is that they don't have the tools that, state police or, the local police have now. So I think it would be private companies popping up. And I think it would work a lot of different ways. It depends. Some neighborhoods are going to hire people to make sure that no kids are riding on their lawn. Some people are, if there's a threat of armed robberies, like in Oakland is another perfect example of right now where these citizens are being forced to pay for services they're not getting, where most of the time you can't even get a cop to show up. And they just had a police officer a couple of months ago that shot a robber, and so, hey, a week before that, an old lady was pistol whipped and robbed. So if a neighborhood wants to hire a private protection company to let it be known that these 2 blocks aren't going to be robbed, because if you come here, you're probably going to get your head chewed off, then that might work there, and across the town it might work a little bit a different way.
But before I left Chicago, I remember basically the Chicago Police Department released their new policy saying that they would not respond to 911 calls. Unless it was an absolute emergency and there was something going on at the time. So if you were robbed or something like that, they wouldn't even respond right away. They would set up an appointment or something along those lines to come to you. They wouldn't come immediately.
Bureaucracy.
I lived in Vallejo, which was the first town in California to go bankrupt. And it was mostly bankrupted because of police and firefighter and public service unions, among other just gross mismanagement. But it was the same thing. My parents lived out there as well, and they called a neighborhood meeting and said, hey, look, unless somebody's bleeding, we're not going to be able to show up. So just to let you know.
Yeah.
You're still going to have to pay us, though.
Ha!
Yeah.
Well, that's my line of work. See, I'm a martial art instructor, and one thing I do is I want people to be as strong and self-reliant as possible, so that there's we're talking right now about who are you going to call that's not the Ghostbusters, right? Who are you going to call if you are really in trouble? And my business is trying to get people to call as little as possible, to need to call as little as possible. Then there's the next step of, okay, at some point, someone's going to need some backup. And what do we do about that backup there? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I really like, an idea that I would hope to see here around Manchester is our radio communication is really picking up, And so if there was neighborhoods, a lot of people listen to police scanners, but hey, my house just got broken into, or this guy just got beat up. And now all of a sudden, instead of a couple cops looking for somebody, you got people, the most effective eyes there are out there, and that's just neighbors. And so, now you have somebody, they're just running from the cops and looking around. But imagine if somebody was breaking into a car and then all of a sudden it's just somebody coming out of their house to stop them. And what I think happens now is a lot of people are emasculated. They don't know what to do. They're only taught your only reaction is to call the authorities. And I think that's one of the really important things that you do is you just teach people to be assertive and like it's okay to stand up for yourself, which can prevent a lot of bad stuff from happening in the first place.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is sometimes people have a distinction between martial arts schools that teach, like for example, Rich Paul was talking about he used to train at a school that was that only taught adults, and that was one of his criteria because it's a serious school. The thing is, that might be for an adult trying to learn, but when you teach children, you teach them growing up to learn how to rely on themselves and how to be people to be relied upon. For example, this kid I was teaching just earlier this week, he was just kind of half-assed in the moves, and I was just like, okay, look, see your little sister playing over there? What if she's in trouble? What if someone's trying to hurt her? Is this how you're going to hit the bad guy? Is this how you're going to do it? And then it clicked with him, and all of a sudden he was a beast on that bag. And so it's that mindset. It's not the move. I mean, the moves and all that, they're cool and they work and stuff, whatever. It's the mindset of get them when they're little, right? Because the state gets them when they're little. I want to get them when they're little and teach them, look, it's all you. There's no one's going to help you. No one's going to help you or your family. You have to be ready to take matters into your own hands. And then whatever they do from then on, as long as they try something, that will solve 90% of society's violence problems, in my opinion.
Well, here's a bigger question in regards to like children and whatnot, because I completely agree you should reach out to children at a young age. Now, the state does that with the school system and all that jazz. What do you guys think in regards to people in the liberty community reaching out to children, like going to schools, and trying to tell kids, about self-reliance and, self-defense, or, giving them anti-police literature and stuff like that at a young age?
Well, I'll let you go first.
That's a pretty tough question.
Because, I mean, they would view that, the state would view that as that we're feeding kids propaganda.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there has been attempts at that. I know there has been for high school kids. Yeah. And it's tough. I think it would be tough to combat. I certainly don't think it would be, a waste of time. I think there could be some unique ideas that could come up and address that. But as far as, because what you would do is basically have a few seconds or maybe even just a couple minutes to try to combat years and years and years of indoctrination and going. It's hard to say it. I don't want to, because I think freedom is a person's natural state. But some people, I'm just like, you're a lost cause.
Well, there are lost causes.
The way, sure. I mean, I have throughout the years, I've had a lot of kids who look up to me as like the local superhero dude.
Sure.
And so I never go into like political rants because they don't know what that is. They don't care. I mean, I got a little bit to like the older ones. Like I have this one kid who's in the ROTC right now. He's like 16 or so. And so I talked to him. He knows about my anti-war views and stuff. And so he's like, well, but we need troops or something. And so where I start with that, I'm just like, yeah, we do, and we need them here. We don't need them out there shooting other people. We need them here protecting the homeland. Like, again, that's not the answer I'd give an adult either. I'd be, I don't want a standing army here. But that's a start. And with the kids, it's not like, well, you don't talk to them. Government's evil, cops are evil, all this stuff. That's not going to be helpful for them. The way I go about it is, it's all about you. You got to protect. You got to take care of your family. All these kinds of ideas that they grow up in, and they're positive ideas, and then it lays a groundwork. And so as long as they have that one crazy uncle or whoever who teaches them that valuable lesson, or says, hey, I know your parents hate guns, but let's go out shooting. And I want you to learn, I want you to learn how to operate a gun safely.
Exactly.
I want you to learn how to target shoot. I want this, that, and then talk a little bit about if someone's trying to hurt you or your mom, like, the cops figure something out afterwards. Right now, you got to protect your mom. So this is what you do in case of emergency, and then they'll remember that. And then they don't need to get into the politics of guns or anything like that. They just know what to do in those kinds of situations. They know how to react. They know how to, more importantly, they know that they got to think that if something happens, they're the first line of defense. And that's just, that's all we can really ask for. And the rest kind of, it does itself,
Well, I think that's really important work, because kids, a lot of them, they're still like a fresh blueprint. And I remember sometimes, and I think most kids, they're ready. A lot of them are ready to learn. And if there's somebody that's somebody that they look up to, that's saying and stressing how important something is, that does stick with them for a pretty long time. And what you're saying, it reminds me of something somebody was talking about the other night, and they said, talking about kids growing up in religion or status this, or people indoctrinating their kids. And it's like, well, if you really believe in like the free market and free thought, then all you need to do is teach kids how to think. And and if you teach them logic and reasoning and how to think, and some sound moral principles, then they should come to whatever similar conclusions that you do as well.
Yeah, I mean, even though I grew up in a conservative religious household, my parents were born in the 50s, right? My dad's Mexican, my mom's American. And my grandpa, my Italian grandpa, had to join the army for a doctor because he couldn't get a job anywhere else because he was the wrong kind of white guy back then.
Right.
And then my parents, they're born in the 50s, and it was they were alive. Both of them were alive when they finally repealed a law in Arizona where they met, which made it illegal to marry a Mexican. So you can't. There's a certain amount you can grow up with certain ideas, but then when your parents, because of certain conservative-led laws, or just let's just leave that out, just government laws, were not allowed to be together. If I couldn't exist according to the government, that you just can't get past that. There's a certain kind of being a biracial person of a certain age. There's just something about that you just can't get. It puts a permanent sort of seed in your brain that, okay, look, who I am at some point has been illegal. Right. And so that sort of challenges your very conceptions about the legitimacy of government, even though it might take years or even decades for that to completely blossom.
So you're telling me that in like the 1950s it was legal for whites and Mexicans to marry?
In Arizona, yes, it was.
Really?
Holy shit.
It was in the early 50s, and it was my parents were born late 50s.
What if they?
Or no, it was
what if
the
they
opposite.
did get? What if they did get married? And what if they had? What if at that time, like a couple in the 50s got married and had a kid?
I don't know. I didn't research the law. All I know is the state of Arizona would not have married them. But then again, they were like 6 and 8 years old when the law was repealed. But it's still
I believe it. It's just kind of short. You know, I'm sure just as equally as even worse.
I still find it insane that people still think the state has some sort of legitimacy in regards to marriage to begin with.
Yeah,
you know, like who are these people to decide like who and who cannot get married?
Well,
you know.
That's why it's important. What we were talking about earlier is why it never even becomes an option when you go through this whole process to even question the legitimacy of the state. And it's easy for me to look back on that now, but you know, when that was all going on several years ago, growing up in California and San Francisco around this, I didn't really think about it either. But now I just look and I laugh and I'm like, you're going and you're begging these people to let you marry that aren't, you know, and then you're acting like they're doing you a big favor when you make some small headway.
Yeah, it's the whole thing with gay marriage. Like,
right.
I'm not against gay marriage. I'm just against the fact that they're begging people, you know, people they've never met, like, please let us get married. Just do it, you know. But at the same time, like, they should be advocating that no, you shouldn't have some sort of legitimacy to decide what couple can or cannot be married. You know, it's something crazy that to this day, people still think somehow bureaucrats can decide who you love and don't love.
Well, from what I understand about that whole thing, marriage licenses came about as Jim Crow laws sort of thing. You know, a lot like with gun control regulations and licenses with that. It was to oppress black people and other minorities and other immigrants moving in. It was so that the government could have a say. And again, it's just that damn. As soon as they get their foot in the door, they're coming right on in. Man.
Now it's used for tax purposes.
Sure.
Well,
and everything else under
I'm not against that for tax purposes. Any way I can give the government less money is great because it does all these horrific things. Like, for example, there's still anti-sodomy laws on the books.
Sure.
And even gay marriage is legal in a couple states, but way before that, everyone's known that one couple that's like, oh yeah, there's these two guys that live together. We kind of, you know, even as kids, you don't understand that much, but you understand they're just doing their own thing. And even your parents and stuff, they don't care. They're just like, yeah, they're gay. They just, whatever, they do their thing. And like, no one cares. They just do their thing, but still the government oppresses them. And it's the same with illegal immigration. I have quite a few illegal friends back in Arizona, some of them very, very close to me. And the government says that they're illegal and they shouldn't be here and all this kind of stuff. But yet they still go to Walmart, they still buy stuff, they still have friends, the community around them does not consider them illegal.
Right.
If the people don't really care, there's a couple asshole racist people, but mostly the community just doesn't care. It's just the government hasn't caught up with that and is still oppressing them and making them second-class citizens. Or we wouldn't even have any kind of citizen if it weren't for the government. That's the problem. It's not that these people are excluded from legal protection from the government. It's the government is specifically chasing after everyone, but some people in particular, it's kind of giving a shorter end of the stick. That's the way I view it.
We're all human beings on this rock that, you know, orbits a big gas ball in space.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
the fact that a government can decide that a human being is somehow illegal because they crossed an imaginary border drawn on a map hundreds of years ago by men long since dead, and that is somehow everyone follows as if like it's the law, because that is what was written down. This person is illegal because they didn't get the proper documentation to cross this imaginary border.
Yeah, I would just like to add to this conversation that America.
Fuck yeah. When you say that, and the kind of the effect that has, even when you're talking about the gay people, the guys that live together that everybody kind of knew. I think that the status quo just gets so acceptable and so comfortable to people. And one of the things that I look back on in the military was the don't ask, don't tell policy. And we had a lot of gay people, and everybody knew they were gay, but mostly what it came down to is if you could do your job or not. And it was looked at like, yeah, we know you're gay. If something really becomes obvious, we're going to kick you out. And to me at the time, that seemed acceptable. It seemed like, a happy medium. But I didn't, but I didn't think of the of what that must do to somebody's mind to be like, well, everybody knows, but if I say it, all these people that, it's okay, all of a sudden there would be all this backlash. I'm like, what are you doing, Like maybe in the 80s, if everybody knew a couple guys were living together were gay, but then if they walked around like kissing and holding hands in the neighborhood, people would freak out. You know, I don't know, something comparable to that.
Yeah, and that comes to like social acceptance, really, of different people, and it comes in waves and in pockets.
Sure.
And the problem is, government's the last person. That's the last people to get the memo, and so it's like, like for example, any kind of acceptance, like a few people. For one thing, it becomes that no one accepts it. Then some people accept it, and most people don't. Then most people accept it, and some people don't. You still have little pockets where you can live free, right? And then until before everyone is kind of on board with at least accepting the way you live, and then finally at the problem is government trails the last. And so, but it's not like if people in your community, in your like 5-mile radius, accept you, no one else accepts you, you're still basically free to live as you want, because what are they going to do? Chase after you with pitchforks and guns and stuff? I mean, probably not. Most people would not risk violence and reciprocal violence to enforce this kind of thing. But guess what? The government will. And so even if there's a pocket of racists in the community, the worst they're going to do is just like look at you funny and then say, we don't like kind of your types around here or whatever. But they're not going to risk their lives to throw you in jail because of who you are, and the government will do that.
Well, I mean, that's sounding kind of brutalist of you, but
whatever.
But no, like with the whole thing with racism within my whole thing is, obviously I think racists, especially in regards to the liberty community and whatnot, should be completely ostracized. But at the end of the day, as long as they're not using force against another human being and they have those ideas in their mind, I'm going to disassociate with them, but I'm not going to like go after them and take them out or, use the force and will of government to do so. But I'm all for ostracization of those people.
Well, I think some people get the term ostracizing somebody a little bit confused, and they just take it as one extreme or the other. And I'll give an example to say, if there was going to be a racist group or whatever, take some group that I don't agree with, but they're still not going to hurt
most people consider libertarians racist.
Well, yeah.
For just bizarre reasons, not having anything to do with race.
Show me the... Go ahead.
I guess race is just... To some people, race just means whatever you want it to be. But anyway, go on.
I forgot what I was saying.
That happens a lot.
I was listening to the smooth tones of Joel, and I just get lost in the serenading of your smooth voice.
Well, that's the thing is, a lot of people, that the big fallacy is, and it's still in people's minds, that if there's something bad with society, we have to do something about it.
And someone has to fix it.
Yep.
Means some kind of law that doesn't do anything. And there's a big moral... This is my moral rant. Okay, I'll finish this, and then you say your thing.
Yeah.
In the air. People think there's a social problem. Like, say, people don't like Mexicans, right? and they're keeping them out, whatever. What people do, what then happens is people would rather, instead of standing and looking that racist in the eye and saying, look, this guy, he looks a little bit different than you, but he's a human being just like you. He has a family, he has kids, he has this. If you're going to hate this guy, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to do business with you. I'm going to keep my kids away from you. Fuck you. Instead of that, which requires a little bit of courage, right? They'd rather hide in their houses and just write something on a ballot. Just say, hey, someone else take care of the problem. And just because something's on a legal piece of paper somewhere and someone else is doing their dirty work, they get to not fight the real problem. They get to be pussies and not go out there and fight the evil that is in the world because, oh, I voted on it. I'm done. And that's what really pisses me off.
The problem with that is because so many people actually believe in the legitimacy of the state. So in that aspect, they're doing what they believe because everyone else kind of believes in that aspect of life, that someone else with a shiny badge on their chest will take care of it as long as I vote, and that, this law will be enacted and whatnot.
Yeah, well, even taking the legitimacy of the state as a given, people don't seem to care too much how well it's working. It's, I voted, it's illegal, I'm done. I don't care if this problem's still there. I don't care if it's gotten worse. I'm done. I did my part. Hey, high five. I'm go back to my thing. And that's one thing that I think that the liberty community needs to do a better job of is articulating how we're going to fix these problems. Not the government's not going to fix the problem, someone else will fix it. No, someone won't fix the problem unless someone fixes the problem. And so we need to do, I think, a better job of saying, here's what we're going to do once the government's out of the way.
Well, my thing is the whole thing with like fixing the problem, having some sort of utopia and whatnot. I don't really think that's even going to happen. In my opinion, we really shouldn't even try and we should advocate how we're going to fix a problem, but the state is what advocates a utopian. There's going to be problems if there's no state. If we have a free society, there's going to be a hell of a lot of problems. And I don't think you're ever going to get rid of those problems. You can work toward fixing them, but you're always going to have some problems. But at least people would be free, and those people would be able to work on their own to fix those problems. But the state is the utopian society. The free society that we advocate is not a utopia, and there always will be, there's going to be theft and murder and all that jazz. That's going to happen, but at least people that have the legitimacy behind them to, steal and murder won't exist.
Yeah, that's the one fallacy is the truth behind objections to liberty is, well, what if this doesn't get fixed completely? And you're right, a lot of problems won't get fixed completely. The thing is, the government never fixed them completely either.
Yeah.
I would like to briefly interrupt this broadcast because Ash the studio cat right here
first off, you need to roll with the punches, okay? Just use the other camera.
No, check it out. See?
I understand that
it's
she's
black.
laying
I
there.
can't see. Dude, just hold on a second.
No.
Ding, ding, ding.
Oh my God, you need to roll with the punches.
Now I can
man.
see Joe's beautiful face and his two beers right there. That's all I cared about.
It's just like Joel trying to scare the pussy away all the time.
That's true. I do what I can.
I mean, you could always switch to the other camera.
Yeah,
the
this one.
camera, the fourth camera. Number 4's on there. Well, no, it's not. That's too far to the side.
Yeah,
but nonetheless.
I think this side looks better if you can get the camera.
I can see you good. Yeah, there was just cat ass in the way of your beautiful face, Joe. So hey.
Well, touching on what you said before, it really is because, we're saying, oh, we ought to do something about that. By we, I mean somebody else and anybody but me. And, politicians and people that seek power and control over other people are predators, and they prey on human weakness, which is, to do the easiest thing. Hey, let me take care of that. Oh, we'll do this, and it's easy just to try to wash your hands for it, So I can't. I try not to get mad at other people because a lot of times it's just humans being humans, and no matter what we do, we're all going to make mistakes, and we're not. Nobody's going to be perfect. And
well, that's a very mature way of thinking of things, and a lot of people don't go there. But what I'm really curious about is where does the famed Liberty Carrots, what's your long-term? What do you want to? What's a long-term thing you want to accomplish? If that's that one thing, that dream that you would like to see in your lifetime that you think you can have some decided hand in. I want to see where you're going because we all know your heart's in the right place. We all know we would all help you get there. Just where are you going?
Well, honestly, what I had a little dream of doing someday was be able to go out and open a little tiki bar somewhere, maybe on an island or the coast somewhere, and have some good music playing and just live out the rest of my days surrounded by a lot of wonderful people with my human needs met, and to be able to go to sleep really good at night. And there's a lot of places that I thought about going before I came to New Hampshire, and honestly, I don't know if it's a long-term goal, but I like being able to sleep at night. And, it's really hard when I've had a lot of luxuries. I've had a lot of stuff, things I could have done. But I wasn't going to get that internal comfort being able to look myself in the mirror and know that I'm doing the right thing. So ideally, when the liberty happens in our lifetime, that I can just wash my hands of all this political mess and blah, 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 and just live my life and enjoy it to the fullest and pursue my happiness as I want to. I mean, that's really my dream. I think it's so overwhelming because there's so much that needs to happen before we can get there. But even just knowing I'm working on it, I'm going towards there. I don't have all the answers figured out. I don't know exactly what it is, but I still have faith and liberty and freedom in those principles. And it helps me sleep at night, and that's honestly one of my biggest goals, is just being able to look myself in the mirror and have a good night's rest.
Well, I completely agree because, all of us moved here for the reason that we want to have liberty in our lifetime.
Right.
That's why everyone has moved here to New Hampshire. I'm in the same boat. Like, if it was up to me, I would not be doing everything that I'm doing here, but in the day, like, I want to be able to, go to bed knowing that I'm doing at least something that is working toward liberty.
Right.
And I want to be free, and I want other people to be free, and I can't go to bed. I can't sleep at night knowing if I didn't do something to work toward that goal.
It's not even going to sleep at night. It's right before. Maybe when you give yourself a little bit of touch and you do it with a smile on your face instead of just letting out frustration.
Yeah,
that's a big difference.
It's that little whatever.
Yeah, with the biggest smile
whatever
on
makes
your
you
face,
lose your
know?
rhythm there. It's like oh yeah, man.
You're all bad. Oh man.
All right, we're going to be cutting it short here really quick, but what should people expect to see from you in the coming months?
Or do you even know the answer to that question?
Yeah, because usually it's just random acts of activism on your part.
Everything that's happened, it's always random. A lot of it's planned, but a lot of it's just spontaneous. And I'm still learning. A lot of times in a lot of things I've done is just is failed my way into success or failed my way into learning. So you could probably expect a lot of goof ups, probably some spoofs, and hopefully some good stuffs and some hard hitting messages of liberty that really open people's eyes and make people smile too.
And a lot of walking vegetables.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're go ahead.
And hopefully expect to see me more on the show because I had an awesome time.
Yeah,
We'll have you back anytime, bro.
for sure. All right, you can catch all of our content at rebelloveshow.com, facebook.com/rebelloveshow, or you can watch this video if you listen to podcast. You can watch this at youtube.com/rebelloveshow, and you can see Joe right here. And you can also please help us, subscribe to our channel, share all of our content, and we'd be much appreciative. So we'll be back again next week with another guest from the community. All right. Peace.
Peace.